What are you talking about, Dad?
All right, well, guys, we're live here. It's September 4th. Let's dive right into it. Yesterday looked like it was possibly going to be just a small, mellow day, and then it turned into a massive flush out. And it looks like it might be a repeat, even though it's not necessarily happening yet. It kind of has that feeling. And I know there's this narrative going on right now that all the quote-unquote retail investors are deep into call options, mainly on these big tech stocks, and that's why you might see like a big concentration in tech specifically with the sell-off, because there's just no protection, nothing, and people are just going to be getting flushed out of their positions. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. But yeah, I mean, Dad, what were your thoughts on yesterday?
Well, long overdue from the point of view that, everything just doesn't go up, and doesn't have a sell-off. And the sell-offs are always worse and, faster than the buys. Historically, every sell-off the market's ever had happens quickly in the last 20 years and gets flushed out.
And then people get scared and start selling
more.
more.
Yeah, I mean, selling brings out selling, just like buying brings out buying, but no one's in a hurry when they're making money. When they're losing money, they get scared and don't think as much. They actually react. So that's why it's faster. But
yeah, you guys know I was expecting this. I said a couple weeks ago I was expecting 1,000-point bad day at some point. Yesterday was pretty much it. I think we'll have 1 or 2 days like that again.
Well, equivalent. I mean, NASDAQ was much worse than Dow falling 1,000.
Exactly, but for good reason. You look at even that's why I sold all my NVIDIA the other day, and I'm very amped about it at 550, because even now it's going to sell off more. It's way too overbought. Some of these stocks like Apple, I sold off a bit the other day too, and I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, well, I think
Mike, I give you props, Mike. You definitely over the last week have been talking about trimming down positions and doing it, and that's definitely I don't want to say ballsy, but it's a hard thing to do in the environment we're in, where these stocks.
Well, Dan, thanks to you got me going on the RSI. And since the last few months, I've been playing that like clockwork, and without you telling me about that, I wouldn't have done that. I just looked at
the RSI is relative strength index, and historically, when it gets over 70, it doesn't stay above 70 for long before there's a sell-off. It seems like in recent years that number is closer to 80, and the NASDAQ. Obviously, you could look at individual stocks, but the NASDAQ was, I think, at 77 yesterday. I think it's still in the 70s. I haven't looked this morning, but. It's definitely something to keep an eye on when you see what happened in March with the huge flush out, and or February when the market had that huge sell off. It got all the way down in the 20s. So
yeah, and that's when for our viewers, when it gets down around 20, it's oversold. So that's when that's how we kind of monitor when us three are doing day and swing trades. A lot of times you can follow the momentum up or down. Like if a stock is starting to go north of 50, it usually is on its way up if you're seeing an uptrend. And then on the opposite, if you're seeing a stock beaten down and it's around 25, 30 and it's going down, that's a great time to buy. Like yesterday, Zillow Group's a prime example. It was just shitting the bed. And I told Dan that, under $83, I had to jump back in because it was down. The RSI was down to like 26 on the day. I got in, it jumped. I ended up getting out in the mid 84 range. So there's a lot you can follow with that, and it's a great indicator.
For sure. The one thing I will say is the times where the indicator you got to kind of throw out the window is either when there's huge volume spikes or when there's flush outs. Because you'll see an RSI on a day get down to below 30, and that stock could easily sell off another 3, 4, 5, 10%. So you got to be careful on days like yesterday. But there's no better feeling than catching a falling knife when it actually hit the ground, where the market's shit in the bed, it's down 900 points, and you're like, oh, nice. I'm jumping on this. And then you make a quick profit when people have lost a fortune. I mean, that's a great feeling. But Dad, let's throw it to you here because I know before we started this, you were talking about kind of coming up with some levels for the big names where you were going to look to pick up more shares. So let's go over those levels.
Look, first of all, you got to think that the theme over the last few weeks has been the splits with Tesla and Apple, which had this tremendous run up, and then they split. And it's very predictable looking back that these stocks have gotten hit hard, and they kind of led this fall. If you want to start with Apple, just because it's alphabetically first, take a look at the daily chart on Apple.
I'm going to bring it up on here too for our viewers. Hold on one sec.
Now, Apple had the advantage of also having great earnings when they announced the split. So part of the move from literally $97 was the earnings and the announcement of the split. So, and it ran up to 138-ish. It's trading now 117.80. You run into support 118.35, then 113, and then 110. So I would, if you're looking to buy Apple, those are levels you could start to think about it.
So sorry, Dan, I was pulling up the chart. Can you say what those levels are again?
Yeah, 118.35, and this is all based on where it had some support. There's a small gap in there, and that's where 118.35 comes from to fill that gap. And below that, it's 113. And these are about, you don't have to pick these numbers exactly. And then 110. The 50-day is 106.25 today, which is moving up every day. But if the market really sold off, I don't think it'll go that far. That would be a great level to try to get in, because that kind of takes away the split and puts it where it would have been with the great earnings. So that's Apple. If you want to look at Tesla, which is the other split, this is even more predictable because all they announced was a split. It wasn't even really based on earnings. The earnings came out a few weeks before the split announcement. This stock, I see 370, a lot of levels. 370 is the first one, 360. These are all levels if you're thinking about buying Tesla because you've been waiting to get in, small amounts. 340, 322, and finally 275. None of them surprise me.
What was the last thing you just said? None of them what?
Would surprise me if it got down that far.
What level?
In a severe sell-off.
Is there a level you would buy Tesla at?
226, which is the 200-day.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that funny. That could happen.
It sounds ridiculous. The stock is already off over 20%. But when we talked about it being overvalued, it was lower than where it is right now.
Well, before you continue, I saw something here last night because, there's been a lot of people that love to make historic comparisons, and they're trying to compare this to what happened in 1929, which led to some sort of huge crash one day. I'm sure you know way more about it than us. At the time, there was this quote from the president of Chase, Albert Wiggins, and it was very similar to what's been going on now. He said, "We are reaping the natural fruit of the orgy of speculation in which millions of people have indulged. It was inevitable because of the tremendous increase in the number of stockholders in recent years, which like now it's like retail. The number of sellers would be greater than ever when the boom ended and selling took place of buying." So when you look at a Tesla, it's run up, and then the run up got kind of out of control, and then it got even more out of control, and then it just got like, oh, this is just stupid. So if it did reverse, the amount of people that probably are looking at their Tesla gains and having that mental little back and forth with themselves where they're like, oh, well, right now I'm at 180. I'll hold on until it's at 150. Now 120 all the way down to, you know what I mean? You could just see it.
Well, there's a big difference. I mean, it's always good to look back historically, but in 1929, margin requirements were like 10%. So you could buy, a $50 stock with $5 at that
Wow.
time.
And that's part of what led to that debacle.
So people got margin calls and obviously couldn't meet them.
But all right, what's the next stock here? Let's look at Shopify.
Shopify, I didn't even put on my list, but my next one I was going to look at was NVIDIA, because everyone.
Okay.
That's going to dip more. That thing is still.
Yeah, 495 is the first level, which it's only $5 away from right now. I think it hit that earlier. 460, 444.
Yeah, I'm waiting for 450. That's
444-ish is the 50-day. I mean, the idea that these stocks are all so far above their 50-day tells you how overbought they are. And shows you what a strong bull market we've been in.
Dad, what level would you buy at?
Well, I would love to buy this thing on the 50-day, which is 444. But, if you've been waiting to get into NVIDIA, I think 460 would be the level that I'd be much more comfortable.
So are you shorting this, Dad?
No, I'm not shorting these names because they're too crazy.
Let's go over NIO. And the reason, Mike, I keep bringing it up is I shorted NIO kind of at the beginning of the day yesterday, held the short in the close, and I'm kind of just going back and forth with how I want to approach it. Because
did you cover some a few minutes ago when we talked about it?
Yeah, I covered a third of a few minutes ago at 1780, and now it's at 1850. And I'm thinking about honestly shorting it again at these levels. I don't think this is what's going to happen today. I feel like the market's going to suck people in and then flush out again.
Reopening it could get back to 1830 to 1840.
I mean, keep in mind too, it's Labor Day Monday, which could mean today could just be less volume.
No, there's going to be a lot of volume today.
You think so?
Like yesterday, there's no doubt today is going to be a water store, some sort of rally. It's not going to be a quiet day.
Well, the jobs numbers must have been good. I didn't see them because the market's rallied, quite a bit since we got on the program. So that's why I think the stock has moved up.
Mm.
But if you look at the longer term chart on NEO, which isn't too long because it's not around that long.
This thing can go down to 5.
Well, you want to be realistic. I would say the first stop would be 15.5 to 16. And the 50-day on this one is 1345 today. And it's going up pretty steeply because it's moved up so dramatically. So that'll probably be in a week, 14.
Gotcha. All right. Well, if today gets ugly, that stock will probably hit 15.5 today, maybe. And that's where.
Yeah. And the other side of this market doesn't need to get ugly. It's been so strong that it could turn around. I mean, it's not obvious that it's just going to go straight down and become a 10% correction.
Yeah, if anything, it's probably going to be the opposite because yesterday it seems like everybody, like on CNBC, Kramer comes out at the bell and was like in full-on panic mode to an extent. He was like, people need to sell and take profit while they still have them. Mike and I are both members of his Actions Plus fund, and yesterday he put out an alert that he was doing selling yesterday when these positions were already down massively, which
Look, I think the concern is that you get a tremendous amount of margin calls this morning because everyone's margined up to the hilt, or that's the thinking with retail. And I don't know if that is the case or isn't, but that would create a lot of selling. And because the support levels are so much lower, you get these pockets like vacuums where it just drops on almost no volume to new levels. And that's why picking your spots and major names is a good way to, play this more long-term or for short-term pops. Microsoft's a good one to look at.
I bought a little Microsoft yesterday.
Yeah, Microsoft is not, its chart is a lot better than most of these. It never had the severe run up. Obviously, it went up quite a bit, but its 50-day is 210.5. So this is more realistic. If you could buy this thing at the 50-day, that would be tremendous. It hasn't hit the 50-day since the beginning of April. So if you could get it at 210.5, that would be a nice purchase.
I mean, if the market has a sell-off today, that'll probably happen today.
Yeah, well, it's down, a buck and I guess around almost $2, but it has a lot of support between 210 and 215.
What about Amazon?
Amazon is an animal on itself. The 50-day is 31.34 area. So that would be somewhere right above that would be nice if you can get it down there.
134.
Now, the 50-day doesn't mean it just stops there. It could go much lower. But if you're talking about a tame sell-off, something reasonable, that would be okay. The 200-day on Amazon is 26.33. That's where you really would like to buy it.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the problems when you hear some of these big hedge fund managers talk. It does sound like even guys like Muhammad Al-Arian, who, Dad, I know you respect a lot, it seems like the levels where those types of buyers would step in are way lower than where we're at right now. So it's not like you necessarily have a lot of big institutional money just ready to come in. I'm sure they're ready, but maybe like 20, 30% lower. Either that or what they see on TV is not actually a reflection of what they're thinking in reality.
Right. You get a little bit of everything because some portfolio managers have to be totally in the stock market, which usually means they're already 90 to 95% invested. So it's difficult.
Yeah, and yesterday it was interesting to see. I think we should talk about for a little. There was strength in the cruises and airlines. They got weak. They, I think, ended pretty strong. They look like they're pretty strong against. Like, look at Carnival Cruise Line, Norwegian, Royal Cruise. Disney's positive. They weren't positive yesterday, but American Airlines. I mean, there's definitely strength, but that's where. And it was kind of shocking, again, Dave & Buster's, which ended up being down a little yesterday, but right back at it this morning. It was interesting yesterday when Kramer came on and was kind of having his little panic moment, and he was almost criticizing the buyers for stepping into those names. He's like, I don't know what these people are thinking. These are not sophisticated investors who are buying airlines, buying cruises. They're going to get flushed out next. He was like, we're not like, that's not right around the corner like the way their stocks are suggesting. He was like, I don't know.
Now, having said that, there was a big attempt to go back into the value names yesterday. The banks were strong early on. They got.
This could be healthy. Tech's been overbought like crazy.
Well, that's why you see the Dow today is up almost 300 points right now.
Yeah, the Nasdaq needed to come back to life a bit. And you even targeted 12,000 psychologically. It seems like it got over that a bit, and there was a melt up going on.
Yeah, no, big time.
And look, the oils are strong today. The banks are strong, and
BP has just been
awful. BP, like if you really look at it throughout its lifetime, like it's probably a great time to just double down on that stuff.
Oh, I agree. I keep saying to myself, I need to double down here, and every day it's down more, and I'm just waiting. I'm like, do I wait till it's down below 19? Like, where is this thing?
I think BP at some point it's just going to become a popular name again for whatever reason, and they're going to eventually be back to where they once were. And we're going to look back and be like, damn, we could have really loaded up at 20.
I feel like those guys, ever since that oil spill, though, they've just –
that was a killer for them. And then their strategy to go to all green, thinking down the road, also was very expensive. And maybe they'll benefit if Biden wins because they're so dedicated to.
If they're just relying on Sleepy Joe to be in office, they've got bigger problems.
Well,
I don't like hearing that as like a thing.
Let's back to the markets, though. The next thing I'm going to say is this is where it gets tricky, because if you are bullish and you don't think we're set up for something bigger, you think that the market ultimately is at the beginning of these new rallies that are going to, kind of be a replicate of what 2009 was, then you're looking, Dak, correct me if I'm wrong, a 5 to 6% pullback might be all you're going to get. And today might be a day where you better pick up some stock, because if this is just a healthy little pullback, you're not going to get much more. And it's tough, because this is where it's so easy to be like, oh, this is the beginning of a huge rally and the markets are.
I don't think this is the beginning of a huge rally at all. I think we've got time before this election. It's hard for me to think in those terms. If this wasn't an election year, maybe it'd be different along with the pandemic. But I think we're in for a lot of rough waters here the next 2 months with volatility, at least.
Well, the problem with what you say, Dan, is that a lot of these stocks were at the levels they're at now, and we're talking about the tax, less than a week ago. So that they've only come off to levels they were at a few days.
Yeah, I think there's more sell-off coming there. I don't see this being.
Well, the point is, it may not be, but it's hard to get excited about the levels now if you weren't excited a few days ago, because at least a few days ago you had the momentum.
I'm definitely not at all excited about I'm expecting more of a sell-off here for tech before I'm getting pumped about, I sold off some Google, some Apple, all my NVIDIA for a reason. I was like, all right, this is all well and good. We need to come back to life.
Yeah. I also think the market is, it's tricky, and it always does what you don't think. And maybe what you see now is you see a rally to new highs and then a correction that's way bigger than what we just saw yesterday. I'm not saying that's going to start today, but it wouldn't shock me if this is a small little pullback and then we get to new highs in the next month, and then there's a much steeper correction.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, anything is possible. It's really difficult to predict,
like
how this is going to play out.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm going to be positioning this, though. Like, I kind of set up a little bit for yesterday, and I'm going to not close much of it out. I obviously closed a couple of the shorts out, but I don't think this is going to be anything crazy. I think we'll get a new high, and then I think there's going to be something crazy. The one thing I keep going back to is the volatility in this market. Even though it seems like it was simmering down for a while, it still keeps showing signs of being more and more extreme. Look, Mike, we've been in the market since 2014 or 15, and it just seems like every year the extremists get a little bit more extreme. And if
you have all these new investors that aren't sophisticated with their money. It's not that you've got in the past, you just had things dictated by institutional money. And that is just not the case. Even hearing Kramer say that yesterday, what are these people doing getting into these stocks? That's where we're at right now. It's a different world. So that has a lot to do with this.
Yeah. And, I know, I don't know I can't really pull it up now. I don't know what this is, but this is nothing. I'll stop sharing this. But what I was going to just say is that last time I brought up the chart, if you just look at an S&P chart over the last 5 years, it's not crazy to see lows that are lower than what we saw in February happening in 2020 or 21, and then maybe even higher highs than we just saw. So I think you just got to be ready for anything in these markets. And
look, you could have traded a whole day in some of these stocks in the pre-market. Take Rocket, which we talked about yesterday. That stock got down to 24.5 last night, and look where it is now. It's trading at over 26.
I think the stock of the day is Beyond. If you look at how that acted yesterday on that huge down day, it acted pretty well. And I love stocks. On my whole rule of thumb for our viewers, anytime the market is really doing poorly and you see a stock that clearly is like ready to break out and it's barely down anything, or it's up a little, it's the writing's on the wall. It's about to be taken off.
Beyond, if you look at the chart pre-market, got down to 126.5.
That's my point. Get on that immediately.
Yeah, right.
No, you gotta be up at all hours of the night to find these levels, you know?
Well,
First
you're up now.
I shorted Beyond yesterday and made good money on it because look at what happened yesterday. The thing was up 8.5%.
Yeah, I made great money getting in and out of that, and I keep doing that with Beyond. I already am long a lot, but I've been adding and getting out of positions off that, and it's the way that stock's going to be on these upgrades continuing. It's going to start reaching new levels and just break out like crazy because it's been beaten down off of nothing. All that happens, they keep getting upgrades. The market goes down, Beyond goes down, and then there's another upgrade that comes out.
I mean,
And look at the news there.
Like sometimes what happens with Beyond, and this is in my opinion what happened yesterday, and the only reason I shorted it was because they randomly get pops that are really, really big for really small headlines. And yesterday was one of them. Like they did some partnership with Taco Bell for free delivery on DoorDash. They already have the partnership with Taco Bell. Like I don't see how that's.
It's more just getting the masses grasping the alternatives. Like I'm literally seeing Beyond Meat now in everything. Dumplings, like any sausage, breakfast sausage sandwiches everywhere. Like everyone is covering this.
Long term, I'm kind of with you. Like I like the story. I don't really know short term. All I know is there's definitely like if you're trading stocks, there's something to be said about seeing the stocks that go up early on headlines that aren't really that big of headlines, and then playing the fade. Because it's a common theme with a lot of stocks, not just Beyond, is if you look at the stocks that are active pre-morning and you kind of look at the reason why, the reasons aren't that legit, you could almost guarantee there's going to be a sell-off after their little morning run is over. So it's just
Dan, I had a bibimbap Beyond Meat bowl yesterday. So that sums up, not only are we in Chinese markets, Koreans now are jumping on this, like across the board, everybody is on the Beyond train. So you should get on before it's too late.
Fair enough. And let me stop sharing my screen again here. I mean, quick touch on the market. The Dow is kind of all over, not really all over the place. It looks like it's going to be up nice. S&P up a little. NASDAQ, I mean, you got to definitely see what's going to happen at the open here because this would not shock me. Keep in mind what happened yesterday. We were on the show, and it looked like it was going to be a nothing type of day. I mean, the market was essentially flat. It was down a little, and then it was just a look out below moment within an hour of opening. And, you know, I definitely think what's happening today, and this is just my personal opinion, and I'm probably 100% wrong here because it's so impossible to know what's going on in the market. So if I were you, listen to what I'm saying and do the opposite. But it looks like the market's about to suck people in thinking that yesterday was all it was. And maybe you get another big sell-off here. And again, I'm probably wrong. I'm going to look like a fool when the market just rallies hard and
I think people are always just naturally optimistic going into a holiday weekend. That's my one thing.
Well, look, I think you got to play this two ways. If you're day trading, you got to just be on top of whatever you're doing and be quick and nimble. And if you're looking for the long term, you wait for these things to get hit.
If you're looking for the long term, get on Beyond.
Well, if you don't get your prices today, have a nice weekend. You know, the levels are there for the taking if the market falls, but otherwise you just don't buy anything.
And Dad, I hear you're getting on the Bitcoin train.
Nope.
Unbelievable.
I mean, Bitcoin is supposed to help you when the market goes down. It hasn't proven that at all.
It's not. It has nothing to do with any of that. You got to stop thinking of this as that.
Has gold though gone up when yesterday was like? What did gold do yesterday?
No, I mean, gold moves, you know, when there's inflation fears and dollar fears.
Gold is on its way out. Yeah, that thing is just going to slowly become irrelevant.
Never.
Okay, Bob. We'll see.
It's going to be interesting. And then the last point I'm going to make is then we'll end this because it's about to be over. But just keeping an eye on Ford because they seem like they want to be a stock that's going to get their day and in the momentum sunlight here pretty soon. Part of me just, I think, hopes that because I own it. But, I think Ford is one of those turnaround stories. And when it shows in their stock, I have no idea. But to me, this stock is going to go up huge when they start to figure it out.
I hope so. I own a lot of it. That thing needs to go up sometime.
And it's up pre-market. It was
another stock, Vuzi, V-U-Z-I.
Yeah, the one time I owned that, it shit the bed for 2 days. Like that was a Mark Roberts specialty.
It actually got mentioned on the halftime show yesterday, and the stock ran up to over $5. So I think you got to watch the volume on that. If the volume starts picking up, you might want to jump on board that one.
I was going to say, like, today that might be a day where you could, if you're day trading, make money shorting Vuzi just based off of yesterday.
Let's enjoy your day and holiday weekend, everybody. Market's closed Monday, so what? We're back Tuesday?
Yep, we're back Tuesday, and have a good weekend.
All right.